Okay, so factoring by the greatest common factor, also known as GCF, you're going to be given a problem such as 12x plus 42y. And you're just wanting to think about what can you factor out that has commonality between both and the greatest. So in this situation, between 12 and 42, we could factor out a 6. And then we just have to think about, well, 6 times what is 12x? So 6 times 2x would be 12x. And 6 times 7 gives us 42. So we want 6 times 7y, because 7y times 6 is 42. So our GCF would be 6, our greatest common factor. And so our answer at the moment then would be 6 times 2x plus 7y. So let's try another one. 36x plus 9. So again, you have to be able to pull out the number or also variables on both. So in this situation, we can't pull out an x because the x is not on both, but we could pull out a number such as 9 because 9 goes into 36. So 9 times 4x would also give me 36. And 9 times 1 gives me 9. So what you want to kind of to check it, that's what you want to do. Like if you were to remultiply it, we want the original answer. And so 9 times 4x gives me 36x, and 9 times 1 gives me 9. So the third one, if we have 4x to the fourth plus 24x to the third. So the first thing to think about would be our coefficients. So the greatest coefficient would be a 4, because 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 plays nice with 24 and 4. And then we need to look at our x's. So the greatest, remember with exponents, so how when bases are the same, we add the exponents. So the greatest exponent we could pull out would be x to the third. Anything bigger, when we check our answer, would make the second half, that 24x to the third, it would make it bigger. So in this situation, our greatest common factor would be 4x to the third. And then we want to think about, we want the inside, of course, if we were to multiply, to equal the original. So we would have a 1, because 4 times 1 is 4. And then we need an x, and we could put a 1 so we can see it, because 4x to the third times 1x to the first. Remember, when we multiply exponents, we add them. And so x to the third times x to the first gives me x to the fourth. And then we have 4x to the third. We want to get to 24. So 4 times 6 gives me 24. We already have x to the third. We pulled it out for our greatest common factor. So our final answer would be 4x to the third times 1x to the first. You can drop off the 1s, plus 6. Now the best thing to do sometimes is, of course, to check your thinking. And to do that, again, so it's just what I just did, we would want to distribute and see, did we get the same answer? So again, 4x to the third times 1x to the first would give me 4x to the fourth. 4 times 6 gives me 24, and x to the third hangs out with it. Okay, so number 4, 14y squared plus 21y. Okay, so I want you to take a second and pause this video and try this one on your own. When you're ready, then you'll want to unpause to check your answer. Okay, so you should pause the video, So the correct answer for this would be 7y and then times 2y plus 3. So remember, best thing to do is to check your thinking by taking your answer and multiplying, which then would give us 7 times 2 gives me 14. Y times y is y squared. 7 times 3 is 21, and the extra y. And so if we got the same answer that we started with, that's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so this problem says 6x to the fourth plus 12x squared minus 18x. So when looking at this, we can see that the coefficient, the 6, would play nice with all of the other coefficients. And then looking at our x values, we have one of them that only has an exponent of 1. So we could only factor out one of those x's. So you can pause this video to start and try it on your own, and then come back and check your answer. Okay, so if you pause the video, then you should have had 6x pulled out as the greatest common factor. And then we'd have, so 6 times 1 gives me 6. X times x to the first power times x to the third will give me x to the fourth. And then 6 times 2 is 12. And we have to make where it says x squared, so we would have 1x here, because x to the first times x to the first is x squared. And then our last would be minus 3, because 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. And then we already have the x to the first, so that's going to create our original answer. And so our greatest common factor for this problem would be 6x to the first, or just 6x. And then what's left over in parentheses remains. So the last example, very similar, 125 x to the sixth plus 250 x to the fifth plus 25 and x to the third. So the first thing to think about is the coefficient. So our greatest coefficient would be 25, because 25 goes into each of them, but we have our smallest one right here, so we can't go bigger than 25. Now if we look at our x's, the greatest exponent would be a 3, so x to the third, because anything bigger than x to the third would create this last portion to be bigger if you were to redistribute to check your answer. So now we just have to think about how do we get like 25 times what is 125. So 25 times 5 gives me 125. X to the third times x to the third gives me x to the sixth. 25 times 10 would give me 250. X to the third times something equals x to the fifth, so we need x squared. And we want to keep this the same, and so 25x to the third times 1 would give me 25x to the third. So our greatest common factor would be the 25x to the third, and then later what's inside parentheses is what's kind of coming next week. The next thing, just as a review, with this concept, sometimes you may want to review your exponent notes, as you might have noticed, because it used a lot of the concepts from our exponent unit to solve, because you can always check your logic by taking your answer and redistributing to check your thinking.